Welcome to the Queens of the DMV. We've been gone for a little while, but we're back. As always, check us out on Instagram at the Queens of the DMV and follow us, of course. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Queens of the DMV. And today I'm here with my co-host, Arnita Greene.
Hi.
And Arial Pegues.
Hey.
Like I said, we're back, and Arnita is really back. She's all rejuvenated from her trip to Dubai and the Maldives. Tell us a little bit about this trip, Arnita.
Oh gosh, it was absolutely amazing. Y'all see, I'm like, oh my God, I'm pilling.
That tan looks amazing.
I know, thank you. I had to make it pop with the pink lipstick.
Yeah.
It was a trip of a lifetime. I didn't expect it to be that beautiful, that life-changing, but it was really nice. I mean, I loved it. I went to the mosque in Abu Dhabi. I went, we in Dubai, we did everything. We had no time to rest at all. So that was every day we had a schedule that we were doing something. And then after 6 days, we went to Maldives, and that was just, oh gosh, it was a time to rest. It really, I got a lot of rest for 3 days. So
nice.
I'm just glad to be back with you ladies.
Yes, we're glad to have you back. And today, speaking of luxurious trips, we're going to talk about our expectations of our $1 million clients and how we deliver.
Definitely.
So ladies, we all have $1 million clients right now. Do you see a big difference on the expectations of $1 million clients versus first-time home buyers or other clients in general?
You can go for it. Go for it, Ariel.
Me?
Yeah.
Y'all know I do all price points, first of all.
Right.
So I don't care if you're spending $10,000 or $1 million. But I think that clients in general, given the market, they all need the same care and attention. But you do have clients who are more needy, and I don't think it's categorized by dollar amount, but you guys that's just my experience. But I do notice that some of the $1 million clients, they do expect me to be their assistant. And I don't mind doing certain tasks, that are outside of what they hired me for, just depending on what it is. But I will be willing to go to the extra mile for any of my clients, as long as it's reasonable.
I totally.
Yeah, I see a difference. I can't say that I don't see a difference. I see a difference in different tiers. I see, and I feel like my first-time home buyers need the most hand-holding and the most time and the most attention, and rightfully so. It's their first time purchasing a property. But I do feel like my $1 million clients have very high expectations of the type of service they're receiving. And even after the transaction is done, their expectations of, continuous communication and keeping in touch and all that good stuff is definitely there, which is a little different than the other price points, I would say. And it's funny, I had a situation that was kind of close to home. We won't say any names, but I wasn't the realtor on the transaction. But we had some mutual friends and so forth. And, the clients that were purchasing were just, very disappointed by the service of the agent, because they felt like after the transaction was done, she went completely ghost on them. And, and if you hear her side of the story, her side is that, well, I was done with the transaction, I delivered, and, I didn't really have any point on keeping in touch with them. So I guess it's also the way you do business. I try to keep in touch with all of my clients and keep that relationship going, but not every agent is that way. I guess if you don't like somebody like that, you don't want to keep in touch with them either, right?
Yeah, sure.
But in terms of, what those expectations look like, I do think the ongoing communication is a big one. I think like the demandingness is different, just how you were saying, Ariel, like about you become the assistant almost, like an expectation that if you're making a $30,000 plus commission, that you are going to deliver $30,000 plus service.
Right.
So, it's like the Ritz-Carlton and the Four Seasons versus the Marriott, I mean, you're just going to get different service. But in terms of how we guide ourselves and, other realtors, what would you say is some good advice in terms of dealing with $1 million clients that you ladies have learned along the years?
Right. I would also say too, it could be an age difference too. I've had $1 million client that was in 30s, young in the 40s, and then I've had $1 million client that was, over 50, and both of their expectations were different. As the young buyer, it was younger buyer. Sorry, it was more free flowing. It was, they weren't in a rush. It wasn't. They wanted to buy something, but they took their time. The older buyer was a little bit more, I need this right now. This is, everything was I need it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've dealt with it not much, but, I definitely saw a big difference with dealing with a younger buyer than dealing with, an older buyer also, the expectations.
What about timeliness? Like, do you think that plays a factor in the $1 million client versus, under $1 million? Do you feel like the expectation of returning phone calls very quickly is there? Do you think, like if you're not answering fast enough, the $1 million client has that expectation that because you're going to be making a higher commission than normal off of them, that you have to respond and put your other clients to the side?
I haven't experienced that. I think that all of my buyers be wanting me to answer.
Right.
There's no difference there.
I don't think it's no difference there. I really feel like everybody wants you to not like stop, drop, and roll, but I think they all are the same when it comes to responsiveness.
I think that's a number one characteristic that you need as an agent, period. Is if you're not responsive, the customer doesn't feel like they're being, that they're being helped. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's like number one, whether you're dealing with $1 million customer or someone under $1 million. I just think, period. You just need to make sure that you're responsive as much as possible to everything. And if you don't know, you can, tell them, hey, I'm going to get the answer for you and get right back with you or whatever the case is. But as long as those lines of communication are open and they're really, being attended to, I will say, in the higher dollar amounts, they do want you to answer text messages early in the morning, in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. And there's no business hours.
Yeah, definitely.
So, a lot of my customers, a lot of my high dollar customers, they do, because their hours are all over the place. I deal with, professional sports players. I deal with, entrepreneurs, and their business hours aren't necessarily matching with mine. Right. So they do want maybe answers at midnight or 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. And I think that's key, like flexibility at any price point. To be honest with you, I have first-time home buyers texting me really late too, but I keep that door open because I understand the process. I understand being a first-time home buyer and how nerve-wracking that can be when you haven't been through that process before. However, I have not purchased $1 million home before, so I don't know the stresses that go along with that. I'm assuming that because you're spending money at a certain price point, that you do kind of feel like, well, I want to make sure I'm getting the right house, but I also want to make sure I have the right agent who is super responsive and taking care of me. Like the care part is seems to be, like in my experience, that has been a reoccurring theme. Like they really want that type of concierge luxury service where you're essentially pampering them through the process.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, another thing that I think is very interesting and a question that I've had from many of my $1 million clients is, who do I know? Like they want to know how connected I am to the price point. And I find that to be interesting, but as I analyze it, I guess it's like, well, if you know people and potentially you have access to off-market deals, you know, especially in a competitive market, then perhaps if you're well connected, we have access to deals that other people, you know, aren't seeing. So that's another thing I feel like that has come up continuously, like your connectivity to the community and just who's who and who do you know.
And also how well you know the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
How
Definitely.
well you know the market. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys do as agents to attract $1 million clients? Do you target that price point or it just kind of naturally comes to you?
So for me, it naturally came to me. I honestly, when I target it, it doesn't come to me. I have tried, you know, back in the day, I've tried and couldn't get one at all. And then, and maybe that comes with being in the business so long, you know, that now I do just, you know, I'll attract it. And it also is who do you know, you know, circle are you in? What circles do you, you know, associate with? So you can get more $1 million buyers and sellers will come your way. So lately, thank God, you know, it just has come my way.
Yeah. I think also the price point is just moving up so rapidly that it's, you know, it's like you can't help but have $1 million clients at this price point in this area because things that were 700 are now $1 million, you know? So it's like they may have been a $1,000 client, but now that price points are creeping up so high, then they're hitting over that $1 million price point. So naturally, you know, those clients become $1 million clients.
Yeah. That is so true. The prices have definitely gone up now. So, you know, and people are overbidding like crazy. So you're going to be able to go up to that number anyway.
I know the market is insane right now, like with the multiple offer situations and just Ariel, you sent that article from the Washington Post where people are spending up to $1 million above asking. So just all of it. And the expectation of all clients is, you know, for us to be knowledgeable, but I do think the $1 million client expectation of knowledge is much higher. Like what you can get away with a first-time home buyer, so to speak, just because they don't know most of the time. I mean, they're savvier than they were 20 years ago because of Google and the internet and articles and all of that. However, not going through the process is very different than someone buying at the $1 million price point is typically not their first home.
Right.
So
I'll tell you what, I'm definitely not showing up in yoga pants to show the $3 million property.
Oh, you're not, are you?
Sorry.
You're listening to Cher, are you?
Yeah.
I've been doing good lately. I've been trying to, you know, change that around just period. And it's better when I'm less busy with, you know, my kids and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not showing up with yoga pants.
Why? So explain why you're not showing up with yoga pants for your $1 million.
I mean, you have to represent yourself well. You have to be prepared. You might have to go into the office afterwards. I mean, you just need to be prepared for the situation. We might want to go. They like to go to lunch afterwards and a whole bunch of other stuff. I went out with one of my clients. It turned out to be a whole day of just stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I'm proud of you.
Ever since that episode that we did about, I can't remember the title of the episode, but where I was saying that I dress up all the time, I've had a couple of realtor agents or listeners reach out to me and said, "Oh gosh, I'm gonna put some nice clothes on for you, Cher."
Right.
We all have you in our mind. We're getting dressed before we go out to our clients.
I tell you, I aspire to do that every day. It just doesn't always happen.
No, it's funny because I had to go out the other day and I was about to put on yoga pants. And then I thought about the show that we did. Like, nah, they're not going to catch me out here yoga pants.
Ooh, we're going to catch her, Ariel.
It will be the day that I see you at a showing or something.
I'm definitely videoing
it. Yeah. So moving forward in this market and, targeting $1 million clients, is there a certain level of professionalism that you feel is different with the $1 million client, or professionalism is across the board something that you guys just always deliver?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I have a question for you, though, Cher. Sorry to change
Yeah.
So what would you advise on in the beginning of your $1 million client to have up front? Because, okay, so I had one person now we've gone out, now he's contacting his financial advisor. And I'm like, you were supposed to do that before we started the process.
Right.
And then so I'm like, okay, but now that financial advisor is taking too long. So what would you advise on that?
So for me, like, whether it's a first-time home buyer or $1 million client, like, I need to see your financials before we get started. And if that means it's a conversation with your banker or your financial planner, I'm not going to spend time, because I've been burned so many times before early on in my career, spending time with people who they may have not been $1 million clients, but they were at higher price points, or at least in their minds, they were at higher price points, but in reality, they were not. So I don't, want to waste their time or my time. So I definitely make sure I'm appropriately vetting their financial situation and confirming that they actually have funds for the price point they say they're looking at.
So basically a proof of funds.
Exactly.
Proof of funds for sure. I mean, with, a lender letter for $1 million client is just not going to be enough.
Right.
Because, we're dealing, especially, a little over $1 million is one thing, but when you get into the $2-3 million plus price points, it's like, now you're going to need a hefty down payment too. So I need to know that you have down payment and closing costs before we move forward. And for those who don't have that, I'm having them talk to one of my bankers or one of my referral agents before we get started. And honestly, I've lost a couple of clients that way too, because they have refused to do that moving forward. And I'm like, well, I guess it's the price of, the price of playing this game, so to speak, because what if I went down that road with them and they didn't have the funds to close?
Exactly.
You can properly prepare for any customer without having some insight on their financials, whether they're high price or, lower than $1 million. You have to be prepared as an agent to know how to help them. And the only way that you can do that is having that first peek of information from them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think so many agents excited because they have, I got $1 million buyer. I got $1 million buyer, but you still need to vet them out. Even more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, it's like a lot of times at that, I would say at the $3 million plus price point, when you start showing houses, the listing agent won't even accept your appointment unless you show proof of funds.
Right.
So, I mean, even if they were fighting you, it's like, and they didn't want to move forward on that, the market is dictating that you need to show proof of funds in order to show properties.
Can I say something? It's off topic, and it wasn't something that we discussed. However, in the $1 million price point, because I've had, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million clients, I see a lot of, I don't want to call it discrimination, but I guess I will. I've been kind of talked down to a couple of times by people who own the property and listing agent being on the buy side.
Mm-hmm.
How old are you? Questions like that. I just don't think that that's right. I don't think the buyer of how much money they can spend has a color to it. But, I think that in that luxury market, there's a little bit of discrimination going on too.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I mean, I feel like the luxury market and the commercial real estate market are definitely that way. I mean, whether you're a person of color or a woman, in commercial, it's women. It's like you can't even get a call back in commercial half the time if you're a woman. Half the time I have men calling on my behalf because I don't even get phone calls back. But same thing in the luxury market. I agree with you, Ariel. Like I've had several times where I've tried to do showings and not a response back. I have someone else in my office call for me. Immediate.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
So it's definitely still that way. But so the other thing, and I'm going to get controversial now.
Thanks, Ariel.
Let's talk about our people though, and how they don't use us for $1 million acquisitions. They go outside, other people of color, not that it should matter, but it does matter. Let's be real. They go outside to use other agents, Caucasian agents, because they think they're more knowledgeable or they have more experience than agents of color. And it's really sad because I've seen it happen in my sphere multiple times where they go out, they use a white realtor, they're super disappointed, and then they call me. And I'm like, interesting. Why didn't you call me before?
Right.
And they're like, oh, we didn't know that you, that you service this price point. Really?
They see what you're doing.
You knew I serviced every price point. I mean, you could easily look up my stats and see I service every price point. So, it's the discrimination within our own people that is really more devastating to me, because I'm like, how come you don't think that we are just as capable of representing you?
Exactly.
And, and how do we change that perception as women of color? We've been in this industry, all of us. I mean, you guys, and I mean, it combined 45 plus years we've been in this industry. If anyone has experience, we do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the good thing is doing this platform now, and putting it out and letting people know that we are capable of doing the $1 million plus client. We do all clients. We are not limited to doing anything. We've been in the business long enough to service and know how to service each client correctly.
I'm going to change the word capable to qualified. We're qualified.
We're qualified. I love that.
Yeah.
And, when I went to, I don't know if you ladies have ever gone to like the realtor luxury training, and it's like five initials. I can't remember what they had, CLMHS something. Yeah. But I got the certification way back when, and it was very interesting to me to hear some of the things that, people at different price points and how to interact with them. It's like actually giving out a regular business card is not acceptable. They want you to have a business card with just your name and just your phone number on it.
And no picture.
And no picture.
No nothing. Just like, get into a conversation with someone at your bougie gym and like slip them a card with your name and number on it. And then now you guys are friends and somehow that turns into luxury business. So, there's so many different things that I learned in that class. And I'm like, interesting. Am I really going to get a separate business card to interact with people? I mean, I didn't, but maybe if I had, I would have more $1 million listings.
They're still coming. I think I don't know. It might be the person. Most people don't care, but sometimes you do have that, that buyer that does care about things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess marketing to that price point is going to be different too, because what they want to see marketing wise is probably a lot different than the average buyer or the first time home buyer, under $1 million.
Right.
You have to spend way more dollars in terms of advertising because you're advertising in higher end locations and websites and so forth.
Yeah, that you do have to spend more. They want you to spend more on the marketing and what you will be paying for. Yeah.
I mean, especially if it's a listing.
Right.
I did, in fact, see some cell phone pictures on a $2 million house, and I was very disappointed.
You did it.
They had to be family.
I'm not going to say what listing it is because then,
It had to be family then. I'm going to take that as they probably were family because that is crazy.
I don't care if it's family or not. Like that. First of all, I'm not going to put out something under my name that's not of quality.
I totally agree. But we're not even doing that for our regular, not regular. We're not even doing that for a 300K seller. We're doing professional photos all the way across the board.
Right. So it's unacceptable. And, you're talking about a 10,000 square foot house.
Yeah, that's.
You know what I'm saying? So this is who's being hired. This is quality, I guess, to that particular seller. But I think you do have to put some marketing dollars into $1 million listing.
Yeah. Well, at this stage of the game, though, you have to put marketing dollars into every listing because
you do.
It's like, I mean, everyone is going to the internet to see the prettiest pictures, best videos. You're competing with that. So it kills me when I see these properties, $1 million or not, when you see properties and they're using cell phone pictures and they're totally okay with that. And then the seller is totally okay with that, or the seller doesn't know. I don't understand.
It drives me insane. I don't understand. That drives me insane when I see that. And I always look at them and say, maybe I should call them and say something. But I'm like, no.
Hey, have you seen your property on the internet lately?
Right.
Well, sometimes it's a good thing. That's how I found my house. It was awful pictures, so nobody went to look at it. Thank you to the agent that did that. Yeah. So as we close out, what are some things that as newer agents especially get into the $1 million price point, what's kind of guidance can we give them in terms of moving forward successfully with $1 million clients?
I would say it's also good to maybe Google them or look them up on social media, or just to learn about your client first before you meet them. I had to do that, and I learned that the hard way before, and I always now do it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I lost a client because I didn't know much about them.
And
they were, that does not happen often, but I didn't know anything about them, the client. And they just felt that, you don't know me enough, you haven't read up on me or anything like that. And I was like, okay, I didn't know I had to do that.
Just like doing your homework. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say also read through the NDA. In some cases with $1 million clients, they do want you to sign an NDA. I would say most, not all. But make sure that you're not, violating anything on the NDA. Sometimes the customers don't want pictures posted on social media. They don't want you to talk about, their experience with you with other people. So, if you have never signed an NDA, in most cases, new agents haven't, get familiar with them, understand what would be required of you as an agent and not required of you as an agent.
Yeah. And I would just piggyback off of the question that you asked earlier, Arnita, about the financials. I think, that's a very important part of the process. Like, make sure you accurately and actively vet the client. And, even if their feelings hurt, it's better to learn what financial situation they are in now versus down the line when you're ready to make an offer and they have $2 in their bank account. So, well, hopefully our tips on working with $1 million clients and delivering was helpful for you all today. We're going to sign out, and as always, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Every Thursday, our podcasts are live at 4 p.m. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. And we're signing off. I'm Cher Castillo.
I'm Arnita Greene.
And I'm Arial Pegues. Until next time.
The Queens of the DMV.
Bye.
Bye.